Welcome to Chazin-the-Dream. I'm the host, Ethan Chazin. This is a podcast dedicated to amazing workplace cultures. And in this episode, which is season 2, episode 9, I am absolutely thrilled to have with us today as our guest on the program, Joe Damiano. Joe is named Saks LLP's managing partner back in 2015. He's responsible for leading Saks' strategic growth initiatives, staff development, and the overall management of the firm. He has over 20 years with demonstrated expertise in accounting, auditing, tax, and advisory services, and he works to guide his firm's members and future partners towards specialized knowledge and proactive advisory work. Prior to his current role as managing partner, Joe was the partner in charge of the firm's rapidly growing construction practice, and he partnered with general contractors and heavy highway and specialty trade construction firms to build more profitable and efficient businesses. Joe also served as partner in charge of marketing with the firm and business development head. In the leadership role there, he was responsible for the upwards direction of the firm and effectively expanding its reach and its suite of service. He currently sits on the firm's executive and compensation committees. Joe is a certified public accountant in New Jersey, a resident of Warren Township, and he enjoys spending time with his family, playing golf, and he's an avid New York Yankees fan. So welcome, Tara, to Chazin-the-Dream. So excited to have you on this little old podcast dedicated to workplace culture.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Thank you, Ethan.
So Tara, could you start out by just sharing with our folks what it is that you do for Morningstar Company?
Absolutely. So I've actually been with Morningstar for going on 24 years, but here at Morningstar, I actually teach. I work with colleagues on mission-focused self-management. So my mission here at Morningstar is to advance mission-focused self-management, which is the culture foundation of Morningstar's human respect. So I'm very involved with workshops. I'm very involved with our different meetings. I'm very involved with feedback on how we're doing as a culture. And so just mission-focused self-management in everything I do.
I'm going to ask the audience because you and I have talked about it. I think I have a general idea of what that means, mission-focused self-management. But for the uninitiated, could you please share exactly what that means and why that's been such a powerful driver in terms of leading Morningstar's phenomenal employee-driven culture?
Absolutely. So mission-focused self-management brings organizational structure to an enterprise spontaneously. And so a lot of different companies have traditional hierarchy structures. And here at Morningstar,
I believe you referred to it as the command authority or like command control.
Yes.
And you said people, when they come to work in that model, have to give up a lot of their autonomy and sense of contribution and control to fit into that pre-existing old model.
Absolutely, Ethan. And they give up really free will. Just because there's a lot of policies, procedures, who you can talk to, who you can't talk to. You're usually put in a little box, and here are the colleagues, or here are the other employees you're able to talk to. And here at Morningstar, where it's all about free will. And so going back to the structure, our structure is based on human relationships and agreements. So when we talk about bringing organizational structure, that's our structure. So, one of a misconception that sometimes may be out there is, well, Morningstar doesn't really have a structure, but we do. And it's based on human relationships and agreements.
Mm-hmm. And if I'm working in owning, leading, running a traditional organization that's built on command and control, I have the levels of reporting authority. I have who you report to. That gives me the structure absent of having all of those relationships. In your world and at Morningstar, what does it take to kind of shift the mindset from that old way of thinking to one based on relationships and allowing people to have really pretty much control over their work and who they work with, who they communicate with, as you said?
Absolutely. So when colleagues come on to Morningstar, everyone's given a mission. So my mission is to advance mission-focused self-management. So your mission in a traditional hierarchy company would be a job description. This is your,
Right. Right.
and so you come on, you're given a mission, and there's other colleagues who share that mission. And so what you do is you collaborate, you work with your colleagues, and absent command authority, but you understand how to achieve your mission. And so to your question, Ethan, on how do you make that change? Because I do believe that is a challenge. I do believe that um, people coming from a command authority, traditional hierarchy company, coming to a mission focused self management company can be a challenge. It's like, what is this? How does it work? And so, but our vision is for our colleagues to flourish in an environment of human respect and to productively work together to advance human well-being, right? So that's our vision. So when a new colleague comes on to Morningstar, they're introduced to our vision, they're introduced to this is the mission, and they're introduced to collaboration. They're CLUE colleagues, which a CLUE is a colleague letter of understanding, which in a traditional company, it would be a contract.
Okay.
And so those are agreements that you make when you come on to Morningstar. And so the same information's there, but you have that free will to build those relationships. You have that free will to ask any questions you want. We're guided by principles. So I actually did an orientation a few days ago, and I was talking to some new colleagues about we have what we call a human respect framework.
Yeah.
So our structure is human respect framework, and underneath human respect framework, we have our principles. And what our principles tell us is how we work together. And one of them is humility, it's tolerance, it's integrity, it's doing the right thing. And we also have principles. We have another principle that's a colleague decision and coordination. So when a new colleague comes on board, they ask, how do I make decisions? What do I need to do? And
Right.
so one of the things we do is we walk through when we talk about colleague decision and coordination and asking questions, challenging, and that's our set of behaviors, is our principles.
This is one of the things that I'd mentioned to you, that when I first reached out to Morningstar and had some initial conversations, and they said, have Tara on the program because she's the one who's front and center. Everything that I discovered was about this humanistic approach to people. And you and I were just kind of joking offline that so many organizations struggle with this because it's so contrary to that pre-existing command control. And so if everything's predicated there on freeing up the individual to give them the autonomy, to give them the guidance, is there a model or a framework that's in place from literally the minute they go through orientation as almost like a support mechanism? Because as you said, it is so contrary to what other people coming into your organization may have experienced working elsewhere.
Yes. And so, yes. So when a new colleague comes on board, they're introduced to mission focused self-management right off the bat. And
So that's like a cornerstone fundamental philosophy of your operational kind of framework.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Ethan.
Okay.
And so a colleague's adopted into mission focused self-management. And we go through, actually, when a new colleague comes on board, we sit with them for a couple hours, really talk about mission focused self-management. And then they go through a 1.5-day orientation, and where we talk about, again, the different aspects of mission focused self-management: planning, organizing, staffing, directing, controlling, right? Those are the different aspects of mission focused self-management. And that's what, in a traditional hierarchy company, your manager does, and your supervisor. And what we ask is that we do this. And these are our agreements that we come on board. And so we go through all of that during orientation. But I think one of the most important things, and I think this is where sometimes other traditional hierarchy companies sometimes struggle, is they bring their employees in for orientation, and then they just kind of like, okay, here's your list of people you need to talk to, here's your work, and you can't do any more than this. Where here we really try to, just Basically, we want you to flourish. We want you to do more. We want you to pursue what makes you happy. It's really also, and I know, and we were talking about this in orientation, is we have a work play model
Mm.
because when people tend to enjoy what they're doing, they're happier. And so that's something when new colleagues come on board as well, is we want to find out what are you passionate about? What do you like to do? And so you are happier because in life in general, I think if you were to ask any one of us in life, what would our personal mission be? I think many of us would be to be happy, happy, healthy, our family, happy, healthy. And so we really try to right off the bat, Ethan, adopt colleagues, especially because I know it can be a struggle coming from a traditional hierarchy company into Morningstar. We really try to adopt colleagues immediately when they start.
This is so insightful, and I'm going to say it repeatedly throughout our time together, is it may sound very alien or different to people who have spent most of our careers in that command control setting. And I guess one of my ways to kind of guide people through listening to you about this is not a Johnny come lately management strategy at Morningstar, correct? Like this is
Yes.
something you all have been doing for decades and decades. Can you kind of talk through the historical perspective of how the company founded and the values, whether it's full-time employees, seasonal workers, treating everybody this way?
So, as you know, our owner is Chris Roofer. So, Chris actually started as a truck driver back in 1970. And
Mm-hmm.
so he started as a truck driver. And so he would haul tomatoes to the different manufacturing companies. And it was through his experiences with other companies, traditional hierarchy companies, that he saw the way that others were being treated.
Right.
And it was in that moment of that's not, I mean, Chris has always been mission focused, self managed, but it was during that time that was like when I start a company, this is what these are going to be. This not going to happen here. And so what happened is, Chris was one of the founders of Ingomar, but when he actually built Las Banas, Morningstar Packing Las Banas in 1995, I believe. Um, it was actually Chris and probably a group of 10 colleagues who are actually here. There's probably about 5 of them here today. Is they actually sat down in this little, Doug Kirkpatrick gives a story about the um, little module that was outside as they were building Morningstar Packing. And Chris and about 10 colleagues sat down with, he said, we sat on these hard chairs and Chris came in and said, okay, how are we going to run this company?
Mm.
And this is where the principles were founded, our Morningstar principles. And that was kind of the start of, okay, this is how we're going to work, and really understanding free will and colleagues being happy. So this started with Morningstar, Ethan, and through each of the different organization entities we've actually built, that's the culture that's there. And so it's something that I would say just started at the very beginning. And so it's nothing that it wasn't something that started as a traditional hierarchy company and then changed. And so I think that's the amazing part. And it's, again, I always say mission focused self-management is the greatest. I honestly think it's a game changer for organizations. And so started from the beginning. Hi, Todd.
Hi,
Oh, you're on
Todd.
mute.
So what I've been hearing in prior conversations with Todd and what you were kind enough to share is this notion of this whole free will and this whole idea of mission focused self-management. It's not some Johnny come lately kind of management consulting firm coming in and saying, you need to start this. It's been from the day Chris started the business and his kind of philosophy about treating people with respect and civility. And so, Todd, one of the things that you had said when we were speaking previously was you were talking about trigger phrases that you hate hearing other people say. And you said one of your pet peeves when a business owner says, my employees. And I was wondering if you could kind of just share some of that kind of thought process to kind of dovetail what Tara's been sharing about the culture and the values there. That have been instilled day after day for decades.
Oh, you're on mute, Todd.
Yeah, and you're on mute.
Sorry about that. There we go. Yeah, like you said, one of my pet peeves always is when people use that phrase, "my employees." For me, I don't know. It just irks me the wrong way. I guess I don't see anything or anybody as mine, or it has a possessive nature to it that I just don't like, because I see every single person that I work with as a colleague, as someone who adds value, who is just as important to the organization as I am, if not more. So whenever I hear people say like my employees, I get it. It's a normal phrase and language that people use and grow up using, but I don't know. I've never thought of myself as saying that. Even when I use the word employees, I find it to be kind of strange. I don't know. Even when we're talking about legal matters or things of that nature, and I say employees, I don't know. It just sounds weird coming out of my mouth. It's more naturally to say colleagues or friends or people I work with. And in conjunction with that, even like when people say, "Oh, how many people work for you?" It's like, well, they don't work for me. First of all, they make a choice to come and work with me, and I hope that's how they see it. Is that we get to work together, not work for, or that's just kind of how I see it. Hopefully that kind of answered your question. I gave a little bit of clarity to that, but yes, it just when I hear it, it just is like, that sounds weird, and I don't think other people appreciate it. Maybe they don't notice it, but in my mind, it's just one of those things that subconsciously, when you constantly are talking to people you work with, and you're like, oh yeah, my employees do this or my employees do that. It's like, I don't know, just sounds strange to me.
And I would imagine that sounds strange to you both because you're talking about an organization that was built literally from its inception on this amazingly different thing Tara was kind enough to talk about, called human respect and dignity. And when you're talking about taking away that command control structure, you lose the direct reporting. So you can't use words, I guess, like my people. So I guess you have to find a different language that matches your values. I wanted to ask something else to both of you, or how do you train or condition employees? Maybe again, Tara, those people who come from a different command control where they're not used to the Morningstar way, to live within the culture there, because the culture is based on respect, civility, empowerment, and that's not a universal model. And so how do you get people to kind of live day in and day out in their work and building relationships and open communication in that kind of environment? I think you talked about when you're asked to describe it as being a strong and innovative and knowledgeable place for people. So how do you kind of precondition people other than not referring to them as my employees?
So I think, the one thing about it is is mission focused self-management, we actually live it here at Morningstar. So when, colleagues come in, and we talked about it, Ethan, a little while ago, about how sometimes that can be a struggle with new colleagues coming in from a traditional hierarchy company. But I truly believe that colleagues will adapt to what environment they're in. Right. So if we all adapt to our environment to a certain extent, and so if you truly practice mission focused self management, and it's not just an orientation, but you go in and you're working with colleagues and you see they're collaborating, you see that there's teamwork, you see that there's human respect, you see this. It's not about just practicing, it's about living it. And so I think we truly have that environment, a mission focused self management. And so when colleagues come on board, it's right in front of them every single day. Agreements, direct communication, So, I think the answer, and I hope I'm answering your question, but I believe that's our environment. So when colleagues come on board, they adapt to it. And if there's struggles, that's what we're here to help them with.
No, that's incredibly helpful. I guess, Todd, I'm also curious if you have thoughts on your kind of sense of contribution in the way you interact with people to reinforce what Tara's been sharing about the culture components there of the free will and the employees being happy. Because again, that's kind of contrary to what other organizations do when they interact with their people. It's all about getting the work done and controlling how they do it and when they do it and who they do it with.
Yeah, I think it's just it's a constant reinforcement of visiting our different facilities and having that reinforcement. And it starts with just the foundation, as you mentioned, of human respect. So it's walking around saying hi to people, saying, how are you doing? What could be better? And that's the basis of human respect, is what could make things better for you. We want to hear your opinions. We want to hear your thoughts, no matter if it's something as what some people might see as small as, oh, it would be nice if we had an extra water jug over here, or it would be nice if we had a little bit of shade in this area. Like those smaller things of people just mentioning it make a big deal in people's everyday lives.
Mm-hmm.
And just to start that conversation, then you get little tidbits, and I say little, not really, it's a big deal for a lot of these folks. But then they start telling you more things like, hey, I think this could work better like this, or hey, I'm starting to see that maybe these people aren't following the principles that we think they should be following, and then it just grows upon that. But you have to start with that first little tidbit of hey, how you doing, and just give me a little bit of feedback, and then we build a relationship and a rapport to where you're able to talk more openly and more freely, and that gives you the confidence to even live our philosophy even deeper.
What I'm hearing you saying, kind of married to what Tara was saying before about getting people encouraged to participate. We use the phrase of, you'd want more control in your personal life, your home life. So why would you want to give that up willingly when you go to work? What I'm hearing is you're constantly interacting with people to encourage them to speak up. And then when they do speak up, those, as you said, those little acts of listening to what they're saying and then implementing their suggestions is starting to almost prime the pump of making them more preconditioned to kind of contribute, speak up, come up with ideas, which sounds to me, Tara, about a lot of what you're doing all the way back from orientation onwards.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's, going back to what Todd was saying, Todd is very involved with going through and just talking to colleagues, and that really does help reinforce what we're trying to do. And it's just soliciting, getting ideas, having colleagues share new innovations, and even if maybe we're not able to do it right at that moment, getting back to colleagues and letting them know that this is our plan, this is what we're trying to do. And you're right, Ethan, on that's what happens is more colleagues like, oh wow, they took my idea, these changes, we saw that we made the comment that we needed 2 water jugs. Within 20 minutes, there's 2 more water jugs out there. And so they did take what we said. And I always tell colleagues, it's having that servant mindset, that servant leadership mindset of how can we serve you and make what you're doing easier and make your life better. And that's something here at Morningstar that we truly believe is helping each other and how we can make each other better. And again, I think that's what makes us much different than a lot of other traditional hierarchy companies.
And I think to take it a step further with that is yes, listening to folks, but then also what I tend to see in a lot of other places and just in general in life is that usually when somebody asks a question like, well, how can we do it this way? Or why are we doing this certain activity this way? A lot of people's first reaction is, well, because we do. That's, I don't have time to like walk through this, but
that's the way it's always been done. Just stop
exactly.
asking.
But just taking the time, and even if in my mind or somebody else's mind, it's like, oh yeah, that really isn't going to work what you're saying. To sit there and have the respect to walk through it and have a teaching moment of, well, why do you think that? Okay, well, if we did it this way, then maybe it would have this effect later on. And they didn't think about that, but it helps get the gears turning in their mind of not just saying, oh, it would be nice if it was this way, but then saying, well, if it's this way, then how's it going to change? And it just is advancing people's ability to critically think, which is fantastic than just putting something off.
And I'd love to know additional thought, because I'm hearing something that I think needs to be either drilled down on or repeated. In other organizations, there's a way of telling employees, stop asking why and stop asking what if. But it sounds like that's part of fostering a culture of free will, Tara, and people being happy, of saying, ask us why, let us explain, let us reinforce the Morningstar way. Think about asking, what if we did it this way and that way? That sounds like that's a critical, I hate to say, on the job culture incorporation there.
Absolutely. Eden, do you have children?
I have a situationally challenging 23-year-old young woman.
So, but when she was 4 and 5 and 6, the amount of
Why?
joy she had
Why?
of life, that everything
What if?
is so interesting. Everything is so amazing. And they always ask, why? Why is it like this? Why is it like that? Just this morning, my daughter, coincidentally, an owl was on our barbecue. And which usually owls are not out during the daytime, but she saw it, nobody else saw it. And all of a sudden she said, well, why is it there? Well, why is this? And why is that? And it's the same thing when people have that enjoyment in what they do every day when they come to work or to come to play during the day. If they have that sense of wonderment of like, well, why does it work like this? Why? And if people are able to foster that curiosity, people are much happier and much more excited.
So,
and the best part is which, just like with children, when they say why, you can say, well, I don't know why. Let's find out together. And that's a humbling experience for anybody. But a lot of people, it seems like once they get to a certain point in their life or maybe a certain job title, they're like, if they get asked, why is it like this? And they don't know the answer, they default to that. I don't know, just because it is. Don't ask questions. Instead of just being like, I don't know why. Let's find out. Let's dig into it. Maybe it isn't the best way.
So, Tara, I hope you don't mind if I just stay on this topic, because I think it's so interesting to me in terms of everything I've ever read and heard from folks there at Morningstar about creating the culture around this, answering the question of why and what if. So if your role there is to ensure that your colleagues achieve their most positive and productive experience with this thing called self-management, and then also training them and building HR to facilitate that, what are some of the like best practice or actionable items that you could share with somebody who's saying, oh my God, everything you two are saying, I'm trying to drink out of a fire hose right now. Can you kind of give me a few nuggets, starting points?
Absolutely. So we constantly we constantly do surveys here at Morningstar, constantly finding
Not
out.
Once a year?
No, constantly. So we do it right now quarterly. And during the season for our seasonal colleagues, it's weekly. And so we're constantly checking in with colleagues, asking them, how's it going? How are you doing? Do you have the resources you need? Do you have any questions? Is there something we can help you with? So it's constant communication is one, Ethan. And I think a lot of times, and I always say, surveys aren't the only, surveys are a great tool to you. It's in mission focused self-management, but the best tool is getting in front of colleagues and asking, how's it going? What can I help you with? Where are there any challenges going on right now? Any questions, anything I can help you with, or, help you get done? And so we use surveys, but again, it's the in-person touch of finding out. You can always learn more when you're actually sitting in front of colleagues. And we constantly have what we call mini sessions. So they're called SMI mini sessions, self-management mini sessions, and where it's about 45 minutes, 4 or 5 times a month, where we talk about certain concepts on mission-focused self-management. So we may talk one day about direct communication. We may talk another day about our principles. We may talk another day of, hey, how can we get better as a culture? What should we be doing? So in these sessions are attended by colleagues, all of our colleagues. And so 45 minutes, and I use it more as a discussion. So we're going to go in there, we're going to talk about, we're going to hit a concept, and let's have a discussion around it. And so constantly keeping it, in front of colleagues with the sessions. I think that's definitely big. But another thing we've done is, you mentioned HR. So our colleagues who, because I actually have a very strong HR background, and our colleagues who work in the HR area, and that's their mission, they're actually mission-focused self-management colleagues. And so we actually made this change this last year, where now we're the culture colleagues, because as colleagues who work with other colleagues and have that impact, we want to make sure that culture, that we're doing the best we can with our culture and with colleagues coming on board. And so I think there's many different things that organizations can do to do that. But it takes a lot of work. And just kind of going back to what we said earlier, Ethan, yes, sometimes things can be challenging, but that's what makes it great. And so, yeah, those are just a few things that we've done.
And so this has been so much practical advice kind of overlaid with kind of framework for shifting the focus from command control to the kind of culture there. I would ask, before we kind of wrap up today, if there's any kind of parting words of advice that you could both share to somebody who's listening in, and they're like you said, you had that walkthrough with that UK company, and they're like, how do we get started? Like, what would be your piece of advice for, you can't do everything at once, but this is what we would suggest you do?
So for me, I'll go first, but I think for me, it's, I really care about people. I really care about people in general. And, one of my passion is how we can help others and what we can do. Because I truly think that when colleagues, people, just, and just life in general, when people love what they do, they're happier. And I think for me, mission focused self-management, it's the way of the future. And if I had to give advice to another traditional hierarchy company who's maybe thinking about this, is it's the best decision that you can ever make. It's the best culture you can ever put in place at your company. And I said this earlier to you, Ethan, I truly believe Morningstar has the best colleagues here. I truly think they are. And I made the comment earlier, like, we could prove that, because our colleagues that are here, if they ever do leave, when they leave, most of them become business owners, partners, but they don't go to traditional hierarchy companies. And I think that's so amazing.
Oh,
It's such
wow.
a compliment to what we do here. I'm sure Todd agrees with that. And so, we're super proud of that, because that's the mindset. And I've talked to colleagues who, have went and been business owners, and they'll tell me, I can never go back to a command authority.
Wow.
It just wouldn't work. So that would be my advice to that. Todd, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I've had the discussion with other businesses that they ask, like how would we get this started, especially smaller businesses, which is
Right.
a little bit easier to change that mindset. But I guess there's starting with the little things you can do, which is removing titles, removing these things that have perceived power within the business. I guess that would be a pretty good start. And I think it's if you already are in a larger company and you have these titles and you have these people that are in the mindset, you have to make some really hard decisions if you want to go down this path. I think it's one of those things where, let's just say you bought another company and you were already practicing mission focused self-management. That would be a big challenge of to look at a new business and say, okay, well, who's going to be on board with this and who's not? And the most important thing you can have is culture. It's actually funny. I have an article right here that says, culture eats strategy for breakfast and transformation for lunch. And so if you find yourself in a new business and there's people that aren't buying into the culture, that's going to be a cancer on that new business, and especially for the transformation of a lot of people. I think you see it in, I think it was Koch Industries when they purchased Georgia Pacific. I think there's a story out there that when they purchased Georgia Pacific, a lot of folks in the C-suite and executive levels, they didn't buy into their culture and they weren't practicing their culture. And I believe they transitioned a lot of those folks out after that, because that's the foundation. You have to be able to take that pain. And I think in order to do that, if I'm talking about if you're acquiring another business or starting a new business, you have to be able to take a little bit of that pain, I think. Just and the sacrifice for culture, so that other people in the business see that, hey, culture is the most important thing here. It is extremely important, and we take it so serious that nobody is above not participating and following what we believe is the culture should be. And I think when you set that precedence, things become a lot easier. And then, of course, you have your foundational aspects of creating people's personal missions and their clues and a lot of the other things that we practice. But I think at the first, you need to set that precedence that, hey, culture is extremely important, if not the most important thing that we have on our plates to do. And we all need to practice it from every quote unquote level of the business. But I will say people with more or less responsibilities in the business.
So I could not end on a better note, because I think you both know that this is a podcast dedicated to culture. And the reason I was so thrilled to have you both on was to talk about the implementation or the manifestation of culture there being a mission-focused self-management. So I just wanted to say thank you for having you both on. But before I let you both go, if somebody were listening to this and say, yeah, I hear everything they're saying, I get it, but I need to kind of pick their brains and ask them a little bit more detail, how would they get in touch with either both of you? Like, what's the best way to reach out and say, tell us more?
So definitely, Todd and I both have emails. And so email is probably the best way to get a hold of us. And
I will put them below to make sure that
Perfect.
everybody has access to them, assuming that you're okay with that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Again, I just want to thank you both so much for your time and your insight and sharing what this, for you, it's not new. But as we both talked about, separately, for most organizations, this is completely alien or contrary to that historical command and control. So thank you so much for your keen insights and everything you're doing to continue to build an amazing culture there.
No, thank you, Ethan. I appreciate it, because you're doing something noble of trying to teach and bring a lot of other cultures and different opinions and thought processes. And hey, you know what? Maybe ours isn't the best, but I'm sure buying into it. So
yeah. Yes, no, thank you very much. I love what you do, and I love being on this today. It was great, and thank you. Thank you for a great discussion.
Thank you so much, both of you. And I will put all of the contact information in the description. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Thanks, Ethan.